of people can't avoid that because of where they live. They really can't move, but it is a big problem. And the exhaust, from cars, I think there isn't as much lead as there used to be, but
Yeah.
but lead, mercury, and cadmium, and other metals that are potentially harmful to the brain are in polluted air. Some people work in an environment where their work environment is polluted with heavy metals, that your body doesn't need them, and they can be damaging to brain and other organs. So, that's a potential problem. But some people take too much of these minerals in supplements
Yeah.
and in food. And like, for example, one is iron. We all need a little bit of iron, a tiny, tiny bit of iron. We need 1 milligram a day. It's not absorbed very well. So the recommendations here in the US are to take, I think it's 8 milligrams a day to get that 1 milligram. But some people will take, iron supplements who are not anemic. They don't need, extra iron. They can get it in their food, very easily. And and zinc is another one too, which was very popular, with the pandemic. Take zinc, take zinc. Okay, so zinc is important. It's involved in so many different enzymatic reactions. It's involved, heavily in the immune system. And but for if you take 49 milligrams or over, that's considered the upper tolerable limit beyond which adverse effects can happen from taking too much zinc. So it's possible to take too much zinc. And some people will get it in a multivitamin that they're eating. They're also getting it in food. It's not too hard to get it from food. And then they might also take an additional zinc supplement, and they're well over that 49 milligram, limit beyond which they can have adverse effects. So you have to be careful about it. And like zinc can affect smell and taste, for example. And there's some sprays, where you put zinc up in your nose and this kind of thing, and they can affect taste and smell. It just have to be very careful. So I have a lot of little tips like that in the book.
Mm. Yeah, you do mention some supplements that you should take. I was thinking like omega-3 fatty acids in particular, but also magnesium and NR, riboside.
Nicotinamide,
Nicotinamide
riboside.
riboside. Yeah.
Right. Yeah, that's one it's being studied quite a lot for cognition, for memory, but for many other conditions too.
Yeah.
And yeah, nicotinamide it's vitamin B3. It's niacin. Most people would know it as niacin, and some people might take niacinamide. There were some studies going on for Alzheimer's with niacinamide, but the goal is to keep up these levels of its NAD or NAD plus. It's sometimes written, and this is nicotinamide adenine dinucleotide.
Yeah.
And it's involved in hundreds of metabolic, like it's involved with hundreds of enzymes in metabolism, including in making ATP, this basic energy molecule, and recycling it, that kind of thing. The ribose, well, this particular form of it, nicotinamide riboside, converts very well to NAD. It increases NAD levels. And the riboside in it, ribose is a sugar. It's what they call a 5-carbon sugar. And it is part of the ATP molecule itself, the energy molecule. It's also part of DNA and RNA, as we're constantly making new DNA and RNA copies of it, to make proteins and all of that type of thing. Supplementing it with it increases NAD levels. And that's why getting enough of this particular vitamin is very important. And and it is being studied, for Alzheimer's and other conditions like that. So that's why I suggest getting that. And there's another like thiamine, which is vitamin B1, is very
Hmm.
hard to get sometimes from food. Getting it, it's in whole grains, for example, but it's hard to get enough of it. The forms of it that they are adding to, like a refined flour and white rice, they've
Hmm.
removed, basically the parts of the grains that contain these vitamins. So they found this out fairly quickly, like when they started making refined white flour and refined rice, mainly in Asia, that people were getting beriberi, which is a very serious, potentially fatal condition from a deficiency of this vitamin. So they started adding it back, but they add it back as a synthetic vitamin. It's not the form that your body uses.
Hmm.
So it probably, it solves the problem of not getting beriberi, but it's not really the form that you need, which is called thiamine diphosphate. You can't find it like that. But there's one called benfotiamine that does turn to thiamine diphosphate in your body, and it's utilized much better than these other synthetic vitamins. So that's a reason why I recommend doing that. It's also, thiamine is also involved in ATP, making that energy molecule, and just hundreds of other enzymes, that it's needed for. So you don't need much of it, but you do have to replenish it every day. It's one of these water soluble vitamins that, it leaves your body. If you don't use it, it doesn't store in your body.
This video is brought to you by Bioptimizers. Magnesium is a crucial mineral for hundreds of reactions in the body and impacts everything, including sleep and muscle and bone health. It is difficult to get sufficient magnesium through our food. In our efforts to remain fit and healthy, my wife and I frequently exercise, after which it's important to recover well and get restful sleep. To help us with this, we chose Magnesium Breakthrough from Bioptimizer because it blends all 7 essential forms of magnesium into one effective supplement while also using all natural ingredients and being gluten, soy, and lactose free. It has improved our recovery and sleep quality since we've been taking it. And we are happy to tell you that Bioptimizers are offering a 10% discount for Magnesium Breakthrough to Modern Healthspan audience. Just go to www.magnesiumbreakthrough.com/modern or click on the link in the description to get a 10% discount with coupon code MODERN10. Thank you for your support. But do you see that the Alzheimer's organizations are coming to accept diet as a solution, or at least a way to ameliorate Alzheimer's? Do you see that message as being more accepted? And could you talk a little bit about what you're doing in terms of the speaking and so on?
Yeah. So I was pressing the Alzheimer's Association like early on, to get them. I even talked to their medical director at one point, and some people high in their organization. This was early. This was around 2009. And, I wrote to them. They wouldn't write back, so then I talked to them in person about it. And they said, well, this isn't the kind of thing that we study. We study drugs. So you need to get, some government agency basically to study, diet, something like coconut oil or MCT oil. We're just not going to study that. But, and for years they didn't, you know, they basically said, well, coconut oil, their official stance on it was coconut oil hasn't been studied, so we can't recommend it. Well, if you won't fund studies, how does it get done? Pharmaceutical companies aren't going to pay for studies, because it's food. It's not drugs that they can make money from. But in 2017, they actually had the first session ever at the Alzheimer's Association conference on ketones. I got to go to it. It was in London. And it was a 2-hour session. Dr. Stephen Cunnane, who has done a ton of the research in Canada, he presented, and several other speakers. So that was a big step forward, that they, acknowledged it. And they had actually paid for some of his research with MCT oil. funded that, and they have been funding him for other studies since then. So he's working now on one with a ketone supplement called ketone salts. He wanted to study the ketone ester, but they had trouble finding a placebo for it because it doesn't taste good. It's hard to, you have to come up with a placebo that also doesn't taste good, that people might think could be the ketone ester. When you're doing a study, you have to design it that way. But so right now he's studying ketone salts, and we don't know the results yet on that, but those are out on the market. The ketone ester and ketone salts are available out on the market, and both, especially the ester, greatly increases ketone levels. The ketone salts increase it quite a bit more than MCT oil. And if you take ketone salts and you also take some MCT oil, it enhances the effect of the ketones, which is pretty interesting. So these are out there and they're available on the market. The salts came along in 2016, and the ketone ester, which is Dr. Veach's ester, has been out since 2018. And it's marketed to, because it hasn't been studied yet for Alzheimer's. There aren't Alzheimer's studies out there. It's marketed to athletes, which have been studied at Oxford. Dr. Kieran Clark and her group has studied Olympic athletes, Olympic rowers. They've studied bicyclists, Tour de France. A lot of people in the Tour de France have been taking ketone esters the last few years to try to enhance their performance, which is interesting. And since it's a natural molecule that your body makes from fat, it's not considered illegal to take this. But so some of the studies, for example, that she did with athletes early on, these were Olympic rowers, and they improved their times. It was by 2%, which is considered remarkable for an Olympic, elite athlete to improve their time when they took a single dose of the ketone ester. And she's done all kinds of studies, looking at muscle biopsies, and doing the ketone ester with and without glucose and all types of things like that. So basically, the ester did get FDA recognition for use in young, healthy adults for athletic performance. That was the claim that could be made, about the ketone ester, because it was studied in that way. Since then, they did do toxicity testing on older people, 28-day studies, and there were over 2,000 doses, and there were only like 6 negative effects, and they were like upset stomach and very mild effects like that that people had. So now it's kind of recognized that healthy people can take it, but it's still, the studies are still pending. And there's one in progress now in the US, people with metabolic syndrome, which is prediabetes. They're studying 150 people and looking at the impact on cognition with the ketone ester. So that study's in progress, and it's supposed to come out, the results, sometime in 2023, late 2023. So, it's just been such a slow process. And the Alzheimer's Association, they have the last 3 years now, they've had more sessions on ketones and more speakers talking about ketones. And they're mostly talking about ketogenic diet or MCT oil, or the combination. There's one group that's been studying ketogenic diet plus MCT oil. And they are talking just much more about lifestyle, about changing diet, Mediterranean diet, and other, like the DASH diet for high blood pressure. That's been studied and shown to be beneficial. It's very similar to the Mediterranean diet with a few kind of differences. There's more emphasis on limiting salt, in the DASH diet, limiting it to if you have high blood pressure, limiting to 1,500 milligrams a day. The average person limiting to 2,300 milligrams a day is kind of what they recommend. But, so there is more attention to nutrition, but the thing that bothers me is that, drugs like Aduhelm and lecanemab, this new one that they just approved, the FDA just approved, they never claim, they don't show improvement in cognition, when people take them. Ketones do, and there are studies that the Alzheimer's Association has funded themselves. Well, the drugs make the big news. Why aren't the ketones, the studies of ketones that are being presented at the Alzheimer's Association, also making the news? I just don't understand it, because they actually improve people. They improve the symptoms. there are bigger studies in progress. There are quite a few smaller studies that have accumulated now, and medium-sized studies. And yeah, I'm not sure what they're waiting for. So
Yeah.
my goal this year is to push them. And their leadership has changed, since I first met these, folks in 2008, 2009. And I wanted to talk to them about this and say, this is very hopeful. And, when they have even the tiniest hint of a drug possibly slowing down decline, even in animals, it broadcasts like it's major news. You see this breakthrough every day, breakthrough in Alzheimer's disease. There's some report of an animal study that comes out, some enzyme they found deep in the brain that if they can target this enzyme with a drug, then, maybe people with Alzheimer's will improve. You hear this every day, but where's the news about ketones? And, so I'm doing my best. I keep writing books about it and
Yeah. Yeah.
talking about it. And,
Uh,
it's getting out there compared to 2008. It's much more out there than it was. I mean, nobody knew about it. People didn't know about it. And a lot of people do now, but many, many more people need to know about this. They need to know, and they need to be able to find out how to do it, which is why I write books. There's a lot of how-to in this book. I have a website, where people can get information. I have a lot of videos on there. I have the scientific articles on these studies. I have articles that I've written. And it's coconutketones.com. So it's COCONUTKETONES.com. And I have a whole lot of information. I started the website at the end of 2008 just to get information out there, and people need to know where to get, where to get all of this. So there's a lot of information that's accumulated on there. And I'm always working on it, trying to make the website better and, adding in new information.